from the News Channel 5 network. This is Inside Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm News Channel 5's political analyst, Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. This week marks the one-year anniversary in office for President Joe Biden. For a candidate who got the most votes ever to be president, how have things gone so wrong so quickly? What can he and his administration do, if anything, to turn things around with the 2020 midterm elections just ahead? What new and continuing challenges in both foreign and domestic will he be facing? Are Republicans likely to retake both the House and the Senate? What role and impact, good or bad, will the continuing presence of former President Donald Trump play? Our guest on Inside Politics this week to discuss and provide insights and answers to those questions and other questions is one of our favorite guests, Dr. Thomas Schwartz, political science professor at Vanderbilt University. Dr. Schwartz, as always, thank you so much for being on the program.
Well, thank you very much, Pat, for having me on the program.
As I mentioned, Joe Biden got more votes than any candidate ever to be president. He began his term with poll numbers well in the 50%. I think a couple times in the spring he touched 60% for job approval. Now he's in the low 40s, and a couple of polls have even shown him in the 30s. What happened? How did things go wrong so quickly?
Well, if you look at the charts and you look at what happened to his popularity, one of the key events, interestingly enough, was the withdrawal from Afghanistan and how badly that was handled. Even though most Americans favored the withdrawal, they didn't favor the type of the images that they got, which presented a situation of incompetence, failure, and then the deaths of Americans there. This was terrible. It was terrible optics. And it started a sense that maybe Biden's not as competent as he has been saying. And then, of course, this got connected to the resurgence of the Delta variant and to the inflation, which is a tax on people that hits across the board, even more than unemployment. In a sense, it affects everyone. And that, I think, those combination of factors were really decisive in triggering the decline in this popularity.
To jump to one of the big issues in the news right now, the president's facing a major crisis in the Ukraine. The Russian troops are massing on their borders. Looks like he says it looks like there's going to be an invasion there. Is President Putin making this move not because he just wants to take more land and he wants to take over all of Ukraine eventually, but did he do it because he thinks he sees a weak president in the White House and this is an opportunity he can push he and the NATO allies to do what he wants to do?
That may be a factor in his thinking. My own analysis of Putin sees him as also responding to his own domestic issues and wanting, in effect, to use rallying the country around a foreign policy issue and the threat of NATO as a way to help his own authority. But certainly, I think he probably, his analysts are telling him the United States is deeply polarized and divided, that Biden has been unsuccessful recently in getting measures passed, that his popularity is low, and that this might be a time in which they could take action without the fear that the United States, or the threat that the United States would take any decisive action against him.
Do you think voters supported Joe Biden last year because they thought he could bring some stability in Washington to end what some pundits have put it, the almost hourly craziness that was going on in Washington during the Trump years?
Absolutely. No, that was always my conviction, was that the essential appeal to Joe Biden was not something really inherent to him. It was because he was not Donald Trump. And that was just about it. He was such a different type of character, quiet, low key, responsible, rhetoric, nothing, no crazy tweets, no sort of reactions that sort of were seen as so inappropriate in the president. But unfortunately, I think that, and I sometimes blame some of my people in my own profession here, academics, who told him he should be the next FDR or LBJ and try to initiate major changes with the barest of majorities.
On that same point, did President Biden misunderstand why voters supported him and thought that his election, and the Democrats in the Congress thought this too, although they had very narrow margins, thought based on this they had a mandate for major changes and for programs?
Yes, I think they did think that they could use the crisis. There's a famous quote, of course, that's often attributed to Rahm Emanuel, one of President Obama's advisors, that a crisis is a terrible thing to waste, in the sense that you want to use a crisis to accomplish your objectives. And to a certain extent, I think the Biden administration and many of the people around him thought that this crisis could be used to advance a whole series of ideas and proposals that they felt were long overdue. That's not to say that they were acting, I think, in good faith. But the problem is that I think in undertaking this, they were misreading the mood of the country.
Things did begin well. The Biden administration got the COVID-19 vaccine program on track. Congress passed the Major American Rescue Plan, also passed a huge bipartisan infrastructure bill through Congress. That's quite a lot to do in less than a year. Why isn't he getting more credit in that? Why are they focusing, why are he and the Congress focusing so much on their failure for not getting Build Back Better through?
Well, this is one of the things that's actually a little puzzling, but I think part of the explanation is the second measure that you mentioned, the infrastructure measure, was passed with a bipartisan vote, but then held up by Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, in effect, as trying to use it to force Build Back Better to be adopted. So the infrastructure bill was held hostage for quite some time before it was allowed to be signed by the president. And I think in that process, they reduced the political impact of the infrastructure bill, which was, I think, a substantial achievement, but that they hurt themselves. Another unforced error in that sense.
The president this week at his news conference said he might be breaking up Build Back Better into small pieces to try to get it passed that way, and maybe do some of the same thing with the voting rights bill, which he also lost this week in the Senate, along with changes in the filibuster rules. That's not going to make the progressives happy, because the things are going to get cut out of the things that Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema don't want to do. But is it possible? Can he even get bits and pieces of this passed?
That's certainly a possibility. It's not completely. There are parts of Build Back Better, parts of the voting rights legislations are popular and could be then. He could see if he could get Manchin and Sinema and other people on board for some of that. And I think that type of more incremental approach to both measures might be a way to help in terms of the midterm election and the prospects for the Democrats.
Dr. Thomas Schwartz, our guest. He's a Vanderbilt University professor, talking about the first year in office for President Joe Biden. Back to continue our conversation with the professor after you watch these messages.